Is anyone here? What did you find?
You are listening to Supernatural Confessions.
Good evening, everybody. It's a Wednesday night. Hope you guys are
Hello,
back
hello,
home from
hello.
work. It's the hump day. Um,
And
Today
since it's the hump
I
day,
got back a
welcome
little.
to
Yeah,
On The
it's the hump
Fringe.
day. So that's Bill opening a beer. I might start to eat during the stream because I did get back home a bit late today. Um, but if you're having dinner as well, let us know what you're having in the chats because everybody's got to eat and I need to eat. So that was kind of the plan as well. We came into the show and while you guys are having dinner, we can tell you stories. You can play us on like your TV, on your, I don't know, speakers. Your family can have dinner while listening to us, which is kind of cool, I suppose.
Oh, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
if you're eating, let us know what you eat today. So, Bill, how's this week been for you?
This week has been all right. A bit wet, but it's pretty good, pretty good, pretty good. Which, l- hmm, which leads us in to our main topic of tonight.
Yes. Tonight's quite a big topic, actually. We'll go through, you can kind of get a gist or a sense from the title that what we're going to be speaking on. We're speaking on the Bigfoot, Yeti, and the likes and similar stuff. But, to bring us in, Bill, why don't you give us the background on the Bigfoot?
Sure. So, let's start from the very beginning. The legend of the Bigfoot can supposedly be traced back to indigenous cultures in North America who told stories of a large, hairy, and elusive creature. In the 1950s, the first modern sightings of Bigfoot was reported, and since then, there have been like thousands of reports, sightings, and encounters. Um, the evidence that tries to support the existence of Bigfoot have been several, and they've been pretty consistent over the few years that it's been in existence. Things that include footprints, hair samples, and audio recordings. However, um, many of these evidences, as we will discuss, may not be as scientific as one would.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll speak on kind of kind of when the Bigfoot came about, but the Bigfoot's been a pretty big pop culture individual, we'll say, especially in
Mm,
the eastern and southwestern and western of the United States. So it's been around for ages. I think everybody in the cryptid community, if you say cryptid, the first thing people are going to say is, "Oh, the Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti,
yep.
maybe even the Loch Ness monster." But the Bigfoot has
I mean,
quite a big foot in the door. No
yeah.
pun intended.
Well, the Bigfoot is one of the big three. So Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, and the Chupacabra. That's what every kid knows about cryptozoology when they were, first reading about it. But for those that are not familiar with Bigfoot and its physical descriptions, we are talking about a 10-foot tall bipedal humanoid, sometimes with brownish, like, amber skin, amber fur, or black kind of like fur.
Yeah. So
In
I mean,
most cases, if a witness it gets close enough, they'll notice a very bad smell.
yeah,
There have been cases of tree branches being broken in specific ways to demark territory, and also howls and noises that people attribute to Bigfoot trying to communicate with them or other members of their species.
yeah. So I mean, if you look at the story of Bigfoot, and especially the different, let's just say, different types of Bigfoot or Sasquatch-like creatures, they're very similar in terms of the description, um, the sounds that they make, and obviously they're Bigfoot, right? But if you look at U.S. in particular, the U.S. doesn't only have Bigfoot. They also have, if you're familiar with the skunk ape. skunk ape was also a Bigfoot, let's just say cousin, but that's more on the southeastern side of the U.S. I mean, when I was in Florida, I kind of asked the person on my airboat if he's ever seen a skunk ape. He said no. So I don't know, but you do see a lot of different kinds, and Bigfoot is really just a big star. And there are so many. There've been so many encounters, so many different types of that's
Yes.
just sightings. You can go back. I mean, I think we do have a image where we can show that basically in the US you can kind of see where the territory of Bigfoot is, and
Yep.
it's just the whole eastern side and all across America.
It's
Now,
also the western
yeah.
seaboard as well.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's throughout the United States,
Yeah,
and
anywhere
it's
except like
interesting
Central America is
because
supposedly
there's
like.
nothing because there's nothing in Central America. You have
Well, it's
prairies and
surprising because
prairie
according to
dogs.
that, right, it's like, there have been sightings of Bigfoot in Central America, and it's
Oh
like,
yeah? I
yeah,
mean, I'm
there's
sure there
I
are,
see
it's
I
just
see
much
dots
less
there.
now.
I see
Yeah,
dots in the Sasquatch sightings.
yeah. So you can see, I mean, just based on this demographic, it's over 92 years of history with the Bigfoot. Now, 3,300 sightings may not seem like a lot, but if you think of something that, you may never actually, like this thing may not even be real, and 3,000 people have seen it over 92 years, that's kind of, it's kind of saying something, But we'll kind of get into this part of the show where actually I think for both Bill and I, or I'll just say for me, I actually don't think the Bigfoot's a real thing. Um, I think if you look at it very scientifically, I think it's highly unlikely that the Bigfoot's actually a real thing.
Mm. So a big part of the cryptozoology community um, wants to distance themselves from the whole idea of Bigfoot because of the amount of let's just say the amount of hoaxes that have come about,
Yeah.
the amount of discreditation that the cryptozoology community has gotten because of fake charlatans trying to sell a story, trying to sell something to people. And honestly, right, a lot of the cases, hard hitting evidences that were presented as Bigfoot evidence has already been debunked. And
Yeah, and I mean, especially with the kind of, let's, like I said, pop culture or reference that the Bigfoot is. I don't know. I don't really see how or why, you know, you would lie and say, "Oh, I saw a Bigfoot," or, "Oh, like this is the Bigfoot's footprint," and stuff like that. To me, it's just, I don't see a point. But I mean, I had a discussion with Bill yesterday about it,
yep,
and it kind of made sense, when he kind of explained it to me that if you look at it, people lie about the size of the fish that they catch. It could be for monetary, like it could be for monetary value. It could be for just the fame, or even just the hype. You get caught up in the hype, and even just to get laid, simply.
yeah. The late thing was a very big part of the conversation. It's just like,
Yeah, I mean, in
um,
part of my research looking into the Bigfoot, actually, there was apparently a person who has become the lead scientist of Bigfoot, which makes it sound like you're just a scientist researching something not really there.
well, okay, so the whole idea behind Bigfoot in America, or a creature like Bigfoot in America, doesn't really align with what we already know with the large apes or even humans in general. Um, and we already know that the closest kind of physical relative, not physical relative, the closest physical analog to what a Bigfoot would have looked like, which is the Gigantopithecus, died
Mhm.
out many um, uh, hundreds of thousands of years ago, and humans would not have been around to witness it, and especially even the Native Americans, which is very, very odd. Um,
Yeah, I think that's the part of where, when we looked at this episode, we have a lot of things to talk about because
mm,
Bigfoot's quite similar to the Yeti. The Yeti is also quite similar to the Orang. It's also very similar to many different kinds. And if you look at the map of the world, there's actually a cryptid or sorry, a Bigfoot like cryptid in every one of those countries. And
yep,
that's
yep,
all
yep.
over in every continent that there is. So, if you look at it from a scientific perspective, could then Bigfoot be Gigantopithecus? In terms of history and like just how it is, it's highly unlikely that that could be possible,
Yep.
regardless of how you look at it. From the explanations of Pangea, because of the Earth's mass moving to then becoming sort of the land bridges between the places, is quite
Yeah,
unlikely that
yeah.
that's
Me
possible.
and Matt workshopped a few theories on like how Bigfoot like could have come about if it was a real creature and if it was like something there. And through a bit of like thought experimentation, it was just like the only way that Bigfoot would have been able to come over to America was during the Pangea period
Yeah,
when America was part of the greater like huge continent.
yeah,
Other than that, America, in terms of like ape development, has been incredibly hostile. Um, it's a fairly flat, non-forested area for most of its existence, which is terrible for apes because that's when you get big predators that just kind of just murk apes. And as I think Matt can go into a little bit more,
hmm,
most times, like apes, um, for them to really thrive, they need coverage, they need foliage, they need something to hide in.
yeah,
Because guess what? Even at our pure maximum, as like the body plan of the Homo sapiens or even just the great apes, like a silverback gorilla or something, yeah, it lives in a valley, in a mountain range, in a forest where
yeah.
tigers can't get to them.
Yeah, and we do have some images. If for those that don't know what Pangea is, but while that's coming up, I can actually let me answer some of your questions. Now, KK Hing actually asked, could there be a population of these creatures living in the inner core of the Earth? If you're looking at it scientifically, the inner core of the Earth is molten. So, unless you believe in, of course, like there's an inner Earth theory where there's a separate land, right? I think it's quite unlikely. But if you look at the image here, you can see basically long time ago when the Earth's land masses were moving, at one point it was a single solid continent, and that was called Pangea. Now,
Yep.
over time, through tectonic plate movement, that actually started to shift into what we know now as the continents. Now, this didn't happen in like 1 day or 2 weeks. Like this happened over many, 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 many thousands of years, and you can see that from one. If you believe in the Pangea sort of explanation,
Mm.
that from there, once it sort of split into the different places, you could say that maybe Gigantopithecus kind of maybe was just stuck there, right?
Yeah.
And that's actually happened in the case in like why Australia is so ecologically in terms of biodiversity, why it's so different, because it's essentially its own little island that was actually part of the middle of Pangea. It just slowly drifted out in time.
Yep. 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 But my argument is that the Australian outback, like these kinds of like temperate places, has a rocky outcrop, has like kind of like a cave system that apes and Bigfoot and Neanderthals and people in general kind of can evolve and thrive in. Um, for a bit of a generalization here, but for most of the time, America was dominated by very large predators, very and flat open plains. And if you did find a forest, you're not going to go far from that because you're just going to get murked by whatever's out there.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
it
and
is an like there is a reason why there are no apes naturally that evolved in America, it's
Yeah.
because it is such a hostile environment for that kind of body plan.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you look at just apes in general, there were actually stories of, or at least fossil records of smaller apes, monkeys being moving from South America to North America at
Hmm.
one point in time, but they actually sort of turned around or just didn't habitat or habitate that area because of what actually grows in America or North American continent. Now that was
Yeah,
mainly
there's
grains.
no
It wasn't
fruits.
fruits. Yeah. So when you look at if you look at Bigfoot, I think we can't spend too long on this because we do have to talk about the
Yeah,
Yeti,
yeah, yeah.
which is a very different story actually. But yeah, in terms of geological and also ecological preferences, I wouldn't see the Bigfoot being a possibility.
Yeah, yeah.
Though I do want to preference that if you look at the many sightings, maybe there was something there, or maybe this is one of the, a folk tale that people heard back in the day, where maybe they actually saw a bear. They
Uh,
saw a bear, and then it was being
yeah,
told through the grapevine, and like, oh, we saw this thing. It kind of stood on two legs, blah 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 blah. And yeah, maybe it was actually a bear that they saw, because
yeah,
even the Native
or
Americans said that they've seen something similar.
yep, yep. I mean, there are drawings in Native America of seeing something very, very, very different. But we'll touch on that. We'll touch a bit later on that because that goes into another topic that we really want to discuss, which is the international Bigfoot,
Yeah.
the Yeti. So Yetis come in all different types and forms around the world. Just because we have kind of shut the book on Bigfoot, as a lot of contradictory evidence has come about, and people coming out as hoaxes has just kind of completely discredited it. There are many, many other Bigfoot-like cryptids out there.
Yeah. And actually, we have an image of basically the world map, and like I mentioned before, and I kind of said, there are a lot of different kinds of Bigfoots or Bigfoot-like creature cryptids. And let me get this image up. But basically, there are different types and very different ones all over the place, right? I
Hmm.
mean, if you look at just Asia, we have the Yeren, we have the Yeti, we have orang mawas, and in
Yep.
Australia you have the what was it, Bill?
Ooh, gosh. Matt, you're gonna have to read it out for me because I'm not saying that word. That
The
word.
one in Australia,
Yeah.
the Yowie,
Okay. Yeah, that's how you say it.
the
Because
Yowie. So
it's
yeah,
spelled really weird, and I'm like,
yeah,
what
yeah,
the
yeah.
hell is that?
So I mean, there are so many types, but now if you look at this map, it's actually very interesting that you see a bigger congregation of them in Asia, and which is
Yep.
funny because when we were or I was researching this, it's funny that if you look at the idea where maybe the Yeti was a distant cousin or maybe one of the lost Gigantopithecus, right?
Yep.
It's funny because this area where these sort of sightings or Bigfoots were found was actually in the same region of where the Gigantopithecus was actually found.
Yep. Yeah. 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 So if we can, so our theory goes is that Gigantopithecus, just like every other ape, every other humanoid species, was migratory. So
Yeah.
they're not gonna just like sit in one place. They're gonna move around, just like how chimpanzee families will move from place to place, different nesting grounds, and eventually they're gonna just cover and explore whatever's on Pangea. As it
Hmm.
broke apart, that's where you get these different subsects of different characteristics. And what's interesting is that all these different sightings of Yetis are all on that kind of boundary where we as apes find find it very comfortable to live in. Kind of that tropical, subtropical, like even sometimes like a tiny bit temperate kind of like environment where you don't want it to be too harsh, but it's still comfortable enough for a species like this to exist, move around. There's enough food around, and there's obviously enough space.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at orang, yeah. So in the comments, Navi Network was asking, "Where's Bukitima Monkey Man, and where does it stand in terms of is it a species of Bigfoot?" Yeah, so I mean, people believe that the Bukitima Monkey Man was the Orang Pendek, or even possibly the Orang Mawas. Now, just a brief history because it's not really an episode on them. But Orang Mawas is actually a Bigfoot species from just across the ocean in Johor, actually in the forest of Johor.
Yep, yep, yep.
So it's been found there, or it hasn't been found. People say it's from there, and even the Bukitima Monkey Man could be similar. Now, if you like or you want to hear more about the Bukitima Monkey Man, you can actually have a look at one of our earlier streams on the Bukitima Monkey Man. I think we did that sometime last year or last season, so you can go watch that after this.
So the Bukitima monkey man is very interesting because it is not unforeseeable that a Bigfoot-like species would be able to cross the Johor Singapore, kind of like water moat.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you meant they're gonna walk through the customs. I was gonna be like, I don't think so. But
No, no,
yeah,
no. I'm saying they can swim
in the
across.
water
Okay.
that's highly possible. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. It's the current isn't that strong, especially if it's pretty calm, and you could swim it. You could swim pretty
Yeah.
easily.
There's a
Especially if
lot
you
of
have.
actually
Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of history where a lot of animals have actually come over from Johor, actually just swimming over.
There you go. There you go. There you go. But what we're talking about is that in terms of cryptozoologically and also scientifically, as me and Matt have kind of agreed on, hey, the most likely places that we're going to find a Bigfoot or a Yeti-like species is going to be in Asia, in these tropical temperate countries, the ones where we don't really hear about most often because they're usually set aside for Bigfoot. But
Yeah.
these are the cases where it is very, very interesting. The sightings are a little bit more credible, and also there is a significant kind of like scientific backing of there being some sort of creature like this being able to survive in this kind of environment with the ecology, with the amount of like fruits being grown there, with the amount of animals there, and also just the climate and also the space.
Yeah. So I mean, let's kind of zoom into let's actually zoom in to the Yeti because I actually think it's kind of interesting, especially when you draw parallels between the Yeti and uh I can't I always have the hardest time saying Gigantopithecus. There
Gigantopithecus.
we
Yep.
That one. Yeah, there are a lot of parallels, and I mean, we can actually pull out an image of the Yeti for you just to get an idea, because I mean, a lot of people have heard of the stories of the Yeti, where it's been found, and this sort of stuff. Now, the Yeti is actually, as you can see from the map, it's actually based in an area that is basically the Himalayas now. Now, it's been
Mm,
said to be seen all the way to Russia,
mm,
where people have had sightings in Russia of the Yetis crossing smaller snowfield roads,
yep.
and there's just so many. And yeah, so the Yeti's also named the Abominable Snowman, similar. They're basically talking about and referring to the same thing. But yeah, it's you can see the Yeti from Nepal, India, to the mountains, all the way to Russia, even some parts of China where it maybe starts to cross the border between the Yeren and the Yeti itself.
Mm.
Now, the Yeti has been known especially in Nepal, to be a very, I don't want to say a deity, but a sort of supernatural being.
It has a
Now,
real big cultural significance in that area of the
yeah,
world, is what you're saying. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So a lot of these Yeti-like sightings from around the world that are not Bigfoot do play a very large cultural significance, um, especially in the artwork. So one very keen example would be I believe the Aboriginals. The Aboriginals did have some artwork, some Dreamtime artwork of the Yowie,
Yeah.
describing the Yowie, and yeah, humans back in those days didn't really just make up stuff just because they there's no time to make up stuff. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
You're at that point where you are fighting for survival, and and one of the big reasons why you are drawing things and you are putting down putting these images down on cave walls is because so you can teach your kids that thing. This is what it looks like, and it's a survival mechanism that we as humans have evolved.
Yeah. I mean, to me,
It's learned. Yeah.
I think I don't see it so much as that. I think with the Yeti, it's more of one. It could be folk. It could be. It could be a folklore or a folk tale that's been told for generations, and I think it is, especially in cases like Nepal, where even in the comments they were saying that the Yeti is seen as a guardian to a lot of the temples in Nepal. Which, yeah, I think in a lot of my research actually brought that up. But what I mean is, I'm literally on the fence here with the Yeti. While I do think it is po- let's just say plausible. I won't say it's really is an actual thing. I think it's plausible that if the Yeti existed,
Hmm.
it may have been a remnant of maybe the Gigantopithecus. It
I
could
think
be,
it totally,
but
it absolutely is.
yeah.
Because that's the thing, right? If a Gigantopithecus like species,
Hmm.
an ancestor of Gigantopithecus, was going to last long enough so that humans would be able to see it, it would be in Asia.
Yeah. The only thing for me is, I think we kind of alluded to it earlier, that I think with the Yeti, it's a bit it's a bit hard to imagine that any ape, I mean, just in case for anybody doesn't know, apes in general don't actually live in very high mountainous regions. I think there's only a few species, especially like the Japanese snow monkeys,
Yep.
that stay in those kind of areas. Now, evolutionarily, it's not a very good adaptation to have. Being an ape, you, especially if you're going to stand on 2 feet and to walk around in especially the cold,
Mm,
even though you may have hair, it's not very good for the conservation of energy, which is mainly one of the things that actually possibly drive adaptation. Now,
yep.
you don't want to be up there, standing up there, and just being blasted by wind all the time and just being cold. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't work out, and usually it's not a trait that gets selected for. Now, the rest of the world, I think if the Yeti was seen at maybe a lower altitude, like maybe an altitude that's similar to, let's just say, the pandas or
Yeah.
gorillas, right?
So
That is a
okay,
very
so
good habitat for them.
I have a theory as to a little bit of an explanation as to why the Yeti could have been a feasible creature that, for whatever reason, in the lower altitudes, there was already another species of Gigantopithecus like creatures. As we're going to find out, there are many, many um, different Gigantopithecus like creatures observed in the Asia region. So it could be it's reasonable to assume that hey, environmental factors and competition drove this particular species up the mountains, but yes, they're not super suited for adaptation, but neither are humans. Humans are not suited for any kind of adaptation other than we run a long, long time, and
Yeah.
yet we're
So
able
I'm.
to survive in the mountains in the Arctic and whatever because of our intelligence and the fact that we
Mhm.
live in family groups. It is not
Yeah.
unfeasible that they, because of environmental pressures, they would slowly be driven up and up the mountain, and they would learn keep in caves, keep warm, use your body heat to keep warm, just
Yeah.
long enough for um, for humans to see maybe the last of them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it could be, and I think that's kind of alluding to the whole folklore or the possibility that it was something before. Now, I was reading the comments and I just saw somebody bring up the Pass incident. If
Mm-mm.
for those that don't know, it's basically where a lot of these the mountaineering group, they went up to the mountains. Actually, it wasn't a mountaineering group, wasn't it? Airplane crash or something. Yeah, I
I
think it
believe it was a
was.
mountaineering group, or at least the crash. The people that crashed had extensive mountaineering experience.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, they crashed in the mountains. I think it was somewhere in Russia, and the thing is, when people went to find the bodies or try to rescue them, they actually noticed people were missing things like missing a tongue. They were also very radioactive for some reason in the middle of the mountains, and their bodies are just completely essentially demolished and like just torn apart. Now that alludes to the Yeti being sort of this interdimensional creature, which
Mm.
I would say is less likely than it being an actual like animal that we just haven't found. Because I mean, what do you think? You're more of the tinfoil one.
Okay, I think I touched on this a few times on the whole backdoors and also interdimensional theory kind of thing, and interdimensional beings coming in and out of our reality, the two-dimensional, three-dimensional, that kind of thing. Um, but I do believe that there are beings from other dimensions that do occasionally shunt into our reality. But the thing is, if a being from another dimension, as I pointed out, let's say from the second dimension, were to come into our third dimension,
Hmm.
it's very, very difficult for us to perceive it, to even perceive this being. I would say yes, the radiation does point to something weird like that happening, but because we have quite like we have that eyewitness account, we have that physical, we have those like prints and stuff like that. Yeah, yeah. I don't
I
think
al-
it's an interdimensional being. I don't
yeah,
think
I
so.
also do want to say that. I mean, people say that the tracks actually just sort of ended abruptly. I think it's quite. I think a lot of people need to remember that, when you are in these high altitude elements, especially when it snows, your footprint will be gone in a matter of seconds, depending on how strong the wind is. The wind can just blow fresh snow over. That track is gone really quick. So I don't think it's. I think it could be coincidence. What actually happened in that incident, we can discuss maybe on another episode. But you can see that even then, a lot of people were pointing to the Yeti as being sort of the culprit for that whole
Okay,
thing.
so one thing about the Dyatlov Pass incident that I will put out there is that I actually think what is most likely happened is that the pilot, like these people, these poor people going through the mountains, they actually stumbled across a radioactive zone somewhere in the mountains, probably
Hmm.
illegal dumping, some sort of maybe like fallout from a nuclear test that just so happened to coalesce there, and they just slowly died because extremities like the tongue and the fingers are the first things that kind of just rot off.
Especially
Um,
in cold.
yeah, especially in the cold, but also radiation that fucking
Ah,
that
true.
that does a number on you. Um, and the Russians, the Soviets, wanted to cover that up, and they heard about the whole Bigfoot thing.
The Yeti
Perfect.
thing.
What if they had their own to cover this up?
Well, I mean, I actually have. We're actually having some technical difficulties in terms of our images. So, but don't mind if you look at that photo for a bit. But there are a lot of people who said. Um, so yeah, there are a lot of photos of actually. There's a temple in Nepal where there is actually supposedly the scalp of a Bigfoot. Um, you can see there's a lot of images of it everywhere in Nepal, but especially I think in one of the temples there's a particular just a scalp of it, so you can see the hair and the top of the head of the Yeti. And a lot of people actually go there to pay sort of respect or to kind of, I wouldn't say pray to it, but just pay respects to the Yeti as a whole. And it's translated to a lot of different places in Nepal. So much so that, it's very similar to Bigfoot in terms of the life that it has. It's just that I feel like the Nepalese aren't really trying to squeeze out money from it. You know what I mean?
Again, it goes back to my theory that, like, hey, these creatures, um, the crux of a legend is a story.
Hmm.
Somebody has seen something that is similar to this. All right. So that's the crux of cryptozoology. We try and put everything in perspective. We try and make sense of the stories that Western scientists like kind of just debunks and says like, hey, that doesn't exist. Um, and the Nepalese Yetis, right? I really believe that there was something like this up in the mountains, and it did survive long enough for early Nepalese people to have seen this. It only takes one person or a couple people to have seen this, the last gasps of a species, and tell their grandchildren, their children, their children, everyone in the village, because there's nothing to do. There's no PS4 back then.
Yeah. I mean, if
Like,
you,
literally, this is going to be the talk of the town. It's going to be the talk of multiple towns.
yeah,
And as we had the discussion before, if you're a hunter, if you're like, a man just foraging out there, and maybe you don't even see Bigfoot, maybe you're just like, dang, I did not get a very good haul. I didn't get manage to get anything. I am going to lie and say that, oh, the Yeti took my prey. And then suddenly you're like the hero of the town. You're like the OG. Like all these people are just like lavishing over you, going like, "Oh my God, you survived the Yeti."
yeah. So I mean, if I
That's
think
that's how
a lot of
that's
people
how
in the
these things
comments are
start.
actually asking what that image is. That image is again a Yeti scalp,
Yep.
and it's funny because this scalp has actually been researched by, I think it was back in the 1930s. The 1930s, there was actually a scientist and a group of them that went to inspect what it was.
Mm,
Now, the findings were that it was just obviously hair, but it didn't really mention what species of hair or what where the hair came from.
yep.
But if you go to Nepal, if let's say tomorrow you want to go to Nepal, you can actually go and see this.
Yeah.
Now, whether it matches the description of a Yeti per se, well, a Yeti is said to have, different colors. It's white. The Yeti could be white. It could be brown. It could be a bit reddish. There's actually different types of Yeti fur, and
Yep.
that's why I said there's a lot of different possibilities of what it is. Now, again, if you show me this, and this to me, I mean, I'm a bit of a skeptic. I wouldn't know what it is. I would have to do some observations and
Now
stuff.
that's the thing, Matt. I don't agree that because that the like some of the descriptions of the Yeti being having different colored fur is
Hmm.
indicative of like different things that it could be. I think that it's perfectly natural that, hey, just like wolves, just like bears, just like,
Yeah.
people, right? We have different shades of hair.
Oh
People
no, no,
have,
yeah. I mean, I'm completely agreeing. I'm saying
yeah,
that the Yetis, it comes in different colors, just like yeah, most animals. It's just that I mean, is this particularly the picture or the image of a Yeti sculpt? Now, I wouldn't know. I would have to go down and have to look at it. You'd have to test or just go and do a
yeah.
bit more
It's
research on what
something
they
that needs to
found.
be tested by the scientific community. But what I'm talking about is the crux of, hey, the story of the Yeti,
Hmm.
the mythology behind it, like, the significance in the culture of what a Yeti is to these people is that, hey, it was a real creature. Whether this is or is not is another story entirely. That needs to be investigated by a scientific team, an impartial scientific team. But Yeti used to be around. You have the last breaths of a dying species
Hmm.
still clinging to life somewhere in the Nepalese mountains. Somebody sees it, tells everyone they know about it. That's how the story starts. That story's never
Yeah.
gonna die now. That is never gonna die.
Yeah, I mean, if I mean, what could the Yeti actually be, right? Like if you look at the current day and time, like what could it be? Now people have described it to it being a yak, actually. Funny enough, because Jill said that actually could be like a mountain yaks, but yeah, it could be a yak. There's also the Himalayan bear, brown bear, which
Yep.
actually has a whiter fur, and you can't really see the difference because it's not really a polar bear. It's a bit brown, so you have a whitish tinge, but also a bit brown. So yeah, it kind of falls in the possibility of that too.
Hmm.
And yeah, if you're really reaching, it could then be also Gigantopithecus if you really believe that it survived all this many years.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So that's the thing, right? We've already established that hey, Gigantopithecus, if it was going to survive anyway, it is going to be within the Asiatic continent because
Hmm.
the ecology, the temperature, the landscape just fits it. And if it was going to, if it was going to cling on and diversify, that would be the area it's going to do it at. Um, and you have these stories, these cultural stories from different cultures, from different types of people, saying they have seen something like this with regularity and with
Hmm.
consistency that says,
Yeah.
yeah, and these stories are way before the Bigfoot sightings. I'm very certain that the entire crux of why the Bigfoot exists is because some American somewhere decided to say, hey, everyone else has a Bigfoot, has this Yeti thing. We need to have our own.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's funny because you look at this now. I don't want to take it away from the Americans because do I think that is it a possibility that there was maybe a Gigantopithecus in that region? I wouldn't say that it's possible, just because again I mentioned
Oh no, it's
in terms
possible
of
that
the
there was
ecological reasons.
it's very possible that there was Gigantopithecus at some point in American history. What I'm saying that compared to the rest of the world, that population would have died out much faster than the one in Asia.
Yeah. So like if you just look at it, the very interesting thing and why I would say in terms of the Yeti, I would say I'm a bit more of a believer, right? Usually I'm quite the skeptic on these episodes, but with the Yeti, I do think it's very possible that it could have been, you know, an actual thing. It's just with in terms of the location and where it's at, I believe that maybe the lower altitudes in China, you'd probably find something very similar. It could be yeah, it could be a lot of things. It could be the Gigantopithecus. And I mean, for those that actually don't know what it is, now fossils of the Gigantopithecus has been found from ages. Now, it's not really a hominid. If you don't know what a hominid is, we are hominids, Homo sapiens.
Yep,
Now, it's not really a chimpanzee or a gorilla. Now,
mm,
Gigantopithecus is actually very similar to orangutans. I actually have a phylogenetic tree to show you guys. Let's see if I can get it up. But basically, we are kind of oh no, we're not divergent. We're actually very split from like our cousins, the orangutans. They're actually quite far away from what we are. Now, our closest relatives are actually the gorillas and chimpanzees. But if you look way back in our history, uh, Gigantopithecus is not even really close to what we are. Their closest relatives actually orangutans, which is why a lot
exactly.
of people suggest that in terms of the color, in terms of the habitat which it's found, is very similar to the orangutans. Now,
Yes.
fossils of it have been found in China, mainly in China actually, but most Central Asia and China, all the way
Mm,
slightly down to Southeast Asia.
yep.
Now, again, I just think I wouldn't say coincidental. I would say it's just very, it's more plausible that. what people think are the Yeti, the orang mawas, the Yeren could be. It could be a subset of maybe what Gigantopithecus is. Maybe there is a small niche of them just hiding away, or a small group of them hiding somewhere. I would say it's likely. Yeah.
Yes, I think I've won that. I think I've won that. I've definitely won that. I've
Well,
won it
no,
on
I
that.
said Bigfoot. I said Bigfoot's not real. It's not possible.
I also
But
agree
the
Bigfoot,
Yeti,
Bigfoot is not real. Yeti,
but the
Yeti though.
Yeti,
My theory on
yeah.
that, very, very sound. Also, I would like to state that, hey, uh, it's also very likely that Gigantopithecus, like skeletons and also their subsets, did not survive the the the, the
Industrialization of China.
the fossilization process, let's say, especially in other areas of the world. Usually, pretty
Yeah.
hard to get those fossils. But yes, there are still stories of Yeti-like creatures in South Africa, in Australia, in South America, even. Um, and one very interesting take on the whole Yeti story and how it can evolve is I believe there is a picture of a Native American drawing. It is a very strange humanoid thing
Hmm.
um, with very long arms. Um, um, I think it's the cave painting. It's the cave painting. Now, this is very interesting because this particular drawing. Hey, what? This
No, you
particular
got.
drawing was found, not that one on the screen, was found near drawings of bears, of brown bears.
Hmm.
So Native Americans, not that one, not that one. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. So it proves that Native Americans are very familiar with their habitat. They're very familiar with their environment, and they know what brown bears look like.
Yeah.
This particular entity that they were describing, no, not that one. But it's okay. Just keep it on there. Just keep it on there. Just keep it on there. Um, this particular entity that they specifically identified as being very different than a brown bear, humanoid with long arms. Now, this can be seen as a migratory, possibly a yeti, a sighting of an actual South American yeti coming up close enough to one of the American Native American tribes, and them seeing it and going, "That's weird. That's really weird."
Yeah. I think it's just. I mean, you know.
And it goes to another theory that this could have been the very, very beginnings of what would eventually become within the Native American, you know, psyche as the Wendigo, the inspiration for it.
Yeah.
Now, that is a very different discussion, but it is a very interesting thought process.
Yeah. And I think, at the end of the day, like, if a lot of things of what we have discussed in terms of the Yeti, I think something that's really important to remember, or to, take note, is that a lot of things could be like the Yeti, in the future. Um, like we mentioned, the Yeti could be a real thing. It could have been something that was around maybe 200 years ago, maybe maybe more than that. But it could be a real thing. Now, I'm just gonna have this little thought experiment, but if we fast forward to when we are grandparents, or when we're telling stories to our grandchildren, right? Now, if you were to tell them about something that looks, or that has stripes along its body, and it was orange and black and looks like a cat.
Mm.
Now, they're probably going to think, oh, that sounds like some crazy cryptid. That doesn't sound real. That doesn't sound like something that exists, especially in the current paradigm, or the current framework of what knowledge is.
Yeah,
it's very unlikely that, or it's actually very likely that the story of, like, for example, the tigers or even some elephants and other species become cryptids because at the way we're going, a lot of those species are getting lost. So it is very important to support your local um, conservation efforts. I think in Singapore we do have quite a lot. You can go to the Singapore Zoo, you can go find out more there, you can go to WWF, or you can go support maybe if you're from Malaysia or Borneo. Borneo has so many different conservation forests and areas that you can go and support. And I think it's really important that you do that, even from the perception or the side of being a cryptozoologist. All these things you kind of got to support it either way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, more power to conservation efforts, more power to all that, because again, big supporter of that. Love the environment, because without the environment, there would be no cryptids around. And
Yep.
back to Matt's point, hey, that's very, very true. Most of the biological descriptions that we had, if you looked back at medieval art, were absolutely crazy. Like the
Yeah.
elephants, the whales. My God, the whales. Um, even if some of you guys are avid drinkers, Kirin, you know that like weird dragon thing that's like on the Kirin bottle? Yeah, that's not meant to be a dragon thing. That's what a Japanese monk thought a giraffe was supposed to look like.
Yeah. So I
So,
mean, it's really important that you support both either, yeah, conservation as a whole, if not a lot of other things that we're gonna fast forward. A lot of the things are going to become cryptids. Like, can you imagine me trying to explain to you what a platypus looks like? Now,
oh no,
if
I'll
you've
do you one
never
better.
seen what a platypus looks like, you're like, and I tell you about it, you're gonna be like, "What the hell is that? Duck bill
Oh,
with
no,
weird
I'll do
webbed."
you one better. Imagine explaining what a pangolin is,
Oh yeah, that's true.
because
Scales.
that's a very Singapore creature that is critically endangered in Singapore. It's like if that's gone, 2 generations later, explain what a
Yeah,
pangolin is.
yeah. It's funny because with pangolins, I actually did my bachelor thesis on pangolins. So yeah, that's actually true. Pangolins as a description is quite weird. But yeah, I mean, just to go back to the topic, right, with the Yeti again, sorry. But to wrap it up, as a whole, again, it's very important to sort of entertain the idea that this is possibly something real. Now, very like the end in our last episode, if you haven't watched it, you can go and watch it. The Yeti and to some extent Bigfoot, it has a very big part in the communities that it's found in. Now with the
Mm,
Bigfoot, it's
it's a
both it
hundred
draws
percent.
in,
It's how
yeah,
towns survive.
yeah, it brings in tourism, it brings in people who are looking for the Bigfoot. Now whether or not it's a real thing with America, I think Bill and I are a bit more skeptical because of, especially with a lot of the hoaxes that's coming up. Now, I think we both do wish that it was a real thing in
Oh
America.
yeah,
I just think
definitely,
it's
definitely.
very unlikely. But when you look at the Yeti and different types of Yeti, like beings or cryptids in Asia, in Africa, and to some extent the eastern side of Europe, we would both say it's very likely because
Yeah,
of
yeah.
the sort of the interconnectiveness of the habitats between the Yeti, whatever that is there, and also Gigantopithecus, which for us is kind of our hypothesis. If it was a real thing, that's maybe a lost subsect of it that was still around. Now, obviously, you also have things like the bears or natural creatures in that area where they can be bipedal while they're not always bipedal, but they
Yep.
live in those areas. It's a very high possibility that it is there. Now, whether or not we'll see it in our lifetime, it's highly unlikely in terms of where we're
It's
going with our trajectory and climate change.
oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I was about to say it's hard to say. It's hard to say, but yes, adding to that, yes, it's unlikely, but it's important that we we always look at folklores and stories as could this have been a real thing? It's always the case that there's always a grain of truth somewhere within folklore, within the cultural memories, because these people are not stupid. Like the average IQ of human beings hasn't really gone up substantially.
If
So
anything, sometimes if when I'm driving on the road, it makes me feel like the IQ of the average person's actually dropped quite significantly.
there you go, there you go. So we can't just discount these stories as just being like, oh, folklore and stories, and like, that's what you tell your kids to behave at night.
Yeah,
No, that's how we miss out on the coelacanth. That's how we miss out on the silverback gorillas,
yeah.
because those
It's
used to be
very
just
yeah,
stories and folklore. We discounted them heavily back then, and now look at us. We're just like silverback gorillas. They're totally real. Coelacanth, they're absolutely real.
yeah. It's important, to sort of go into go into it a bit more. But yeah, you know, at the end of the day, what we do on this show is to kind of give you the gist of the topic. But you go out there and find more evidence that we weren't able to show you many evidence because one, we can't really show videos on the stream. But if you do see more evidence out there, go and look at that video and sort of look at how the animal walks and how it kind of interpret that for yourself. But also send it to us. And if you want some conversation about it, we can always talk about it on Discord where you can find us. If you have questions on the sighting of a Bigfoot or a Yeti, you can find us there. Now,
Yeah, I mean, like with the
sorry.
new season, right? We
Yeah.
are we are heavily leaning towards like we are going to deconstruct stories. We're going to deconstruct them. We're gonna distill them down to their essences, and then we're going to find that grain of truth in them. Our aim here is not to present all the information, but it's enough for you, the viewer, to question and start asking questions. Like, why is it there? Why does the Bigfoot look the way it does? Why is it here? Does it make sense that it's here?
Yeah.
Does it fill a niche somewhere in the environment that nothing else does? That's that's the questions that we want to answer. We want to try and answer here.
Yeah. But again, if you like what you see here on the Fringe, also stay tuned to our shows on Friday, not us necessarily, but Friday Night Lives. You have Eugene and John, and maybe I can't really tell you when, but it's in the book that there will be a crossover soon enough. We just haven't really selected a date, but there is or will be a crossover soon. And if you guys watched my Chinese New or our Chinese New Year wishes, we actually have a something going on in June actually. The 30th of June was the date
Hmm.
that we set. I can't really give you more information, but if for those that of you who didn't really go to walk or kind of missed out on the last time we all got together, keep your June free because that's going to be a very interesting period of time. There's a lot of changes happening to the Supernatural Confessions YouTube page. There's merch coming out. Merch will be coming out if you want. You can always purchase that. We haven't really made it live yet, but you can purchase that. And if you do want to see like an On The Fringe T-shirt, uh, we can design something like that. If you're interested, let us know. But there's a lot of things coming up, and I would just say be very excited. We've only just started February, and there's a few months to go, but things are coming out, and it's very interesting.
Hmm. We've obviously got a lot of projects coming up, and I am very excited for that. And also, well, a lot more cryptids to talk about, and also conspiracies.
Oh
Now,
yes,
on that
again.
specific line of we are here to get you to ask questions, I think that.
KK Hing, I just saw something. KK Hing said we missed you, Matt. Matt for Kike last October. Yes, but if I'm gonna say if there was a live show this week, I mean this year, I will definitely be there. Whether it's whenever it happens. Actually, I feel like if I talk more, I'm just gonna tell I'm just gonna say when it happens and where it is. But yeah, there's there's something planned, and definitely I will be there, um, for sure, regardless. As long as it's not in July or end of July, because I'm going to Japan. So, but not then.
Hmm. Fantastic,
Bill will
fantastic.
be there too.
I'm always gonna be there. It's just a
Yeah.
given. Since last year, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not here now.
Yeah, I think this year we kind of we're changing our setup, and especially even on Friday Night Lives and how we're running the channel. I think it's important for us to grow one as a community, but also for our shows to have a different platform or have a different presence in especially the community that we have. We do have a lot of people that watch us, subscribe to us on Facebook. We have our TikTok as well, and as we get bigger, we also want to sort of get better at what we do
Oh
to
yeah,
I mean,
oh yeah, oh
especially
yeah.
for people that's been supporting us since forever, right? Yeah,
We
it's a lot
want
of
to
fun stuff.
find our own ecological niche within the YouTube
Mm.
ecosystem, as it were. So I would encourage everyone to maybe share us on YouTube. Maybe next time we're gonna have like we're gonna have a live stream. Bring a friend, ask a friend to watch, come watch with you.
You mean a live stream or a live show?
Both, both, both. That's the call to action. Do both. If you
But
don't
yeah,
have friends, make a friend, then bring them
yeah,
along.
yeah. I mean, again, I can't say when the live show is, but the vision of what the live show will be is very interesting, and I think it's very different from those that have been to the live event last time. It'll be very different, and I think it's something you wouldn't want to miss. Then, oh, by the way, if we ever mentioned, if you guys also want to have like uh the walk with Changi, and you want to see us there for maybe one of the days, if you can always hook up Jonathan and Eugene, where they host the walking Changi or walk with Changi. But yeah, you can you maybe want if you tell us when you guys want to go, we'll go and we'll pop in and meet you guys there. It's a small little meet and greet, but also listen to ghost stories and stuff. And to answer KK's question, yes, yes, we do make it sometimes on Friday night as well. This year definitely we will be going back. It's just a matter of when.
Yep, yep. All right then. All right then. I think yeah.
I
I
think
think
yeah,
it's
we
about
have
time now.
no questions besides the ones I
Fantastic, fantastic.
addressed.
All right. Do we okay, let's sign it off then. Like
You go
thank
ahead.
yeah, yep. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for another episode of On the Fringe. And well, I hope this episode has got your brains thinking and questioning everything you know about the Bigfoot and saying, maybe no Bigfoot, but maybe there's a Yeti just in your
Maybe
backyard.
there's Yeti.
Maybe there's a Yeti, just outside on the Nicole Highway. You never know.
Yeah, it could
Now,
be. I didn't
yeah.
say
Now
wrong
that's on the
mama.
fringe.
Yeah. But again, I'll sign out too. Thanks again for joining us. For those who have always been here every day, KK Hing, I see Jill, I see Anna Wong, I see Rachel, I see Dory Mima, someone new. I see Navi Network. A lot of people and some new names and some new faces, right? Thank you for exploring the unexplained with us and pushing the boundaries of what we currently know as to be true. But until next time, right? Stay on the fringes and always venture beyond what we do currently know.
Right.
And we'll see you next week.
Thank you very much. Have a good
Bling.
night.
What did you find? You are listening to Supernatural Confessions.